a sense of what life is like for people at that income level, but nobody really gets to see the way it really works until a show like this and sort of the calling card of HBO opens those doors for you, and then you've got to take that opportunity and really start studying quickly to get the details right.
We have a major problem. He's erratic. He's making bad decisions. If he's not careful, he's going to destroy the company.
And what, you going to do something?
I think I'm the best option.
Oh, right, because you like playing boss?
We're trying to really create a very realistic sense of the world, and then within that, our cast can create the sort of unusual humor and the writers as well, of course.
Local TV?
Dad, nobody watches TV.
Why shouldn't we do all the news?
Well, Kim Jong Pop, because that's not how things work in this country.
We did look at the Murdoch family. We looked at Roger Ailes. We looked at Sumner Redstone. I also looked at families that had a sort of a longer legacy in New York, like the Bronfman family from the Seagram's world. And, we're not trying to create a reproduction of any of these people. We're not saying that Logan Roy is any one of them, but there are elements of all of them that are sort of folded into that character. And I like to think that we pay equal attention to all the parts of New York, whether it's the billionaire world or the world that some of the other characters who have less money and power inhabit. And the reason for that is I think we want to really make sure that the audience sees the split between the 1% or 0.1% and the rest of our lives.
He looks demented. Why is he so shiny?
I always wanted one of you kids to take over.
People would do well to remember there's going to be a new sheriff in town.
Stylistically, my design work tends to try to make as much use out of locations as possible. I love building sets on stage, but there is something in the psychology of kind of showing up to a sound stage that, to me, kind of diminishes the energy a little bit sometimes. In season 1, when we were trying to come up with a location to build our sets for the Waystar corporate offices, we didn't have stages available to us to build something nearly as big as what we wanted. I wanted to build it, but I wanted to build it in a real office building. It took a little while to kind of agree on where we thought the company should be in terms of its global power. Was it a bit antiquated, and maybe it was feeling a little bit like a more tired dinosaur of a company, or was it really cutting edge and like the center of power? And ultimately, we went for the more cutting edge version.
Everybody, stay in your lane.
Stop! Security! Back off! This is executive level business.
For example, in season 2, we built the set for the congressional hearings in Washington, D.C. And it was something that was talked about all season that, hey, we're going to have this big congressional hearing episode. So we want it to be accurate, and I researched all the different rooms in the various Senate buildings in Washington where those type of hearings could happen. And I sort of said, like, okay, well, here's research for a bunch of different ones. I like this one myself. How many people do we think we want to put in there? Is it 200 extras as the people watching the hearings? And people thought, yeah, that seems about right. So we gave a couple of options to Mark Mylod, who is the director, of different sizes that we could go. And of course, he liked the biggest one. So we knew that. But what we didn't know was exactly what the dialogue was going to be. We didn't know exactly which characters were going to be in there. And we didn't really know how long they were going to want to keep the set. Was it one episode? Was it 2 episodes? We didn't know. So there's some guesswork on my part, and I often try to design with just a little extra, safety room, making sure that things are perhaps a touch bigger to give extra options for putting more cast in, having plenty of room for crew to work quickly. Things like that, I might add just a touch more space than in reality. But I always try to make sure that the spaces we design don't feel like a set. Sometimes people will put a lot more space in a set than should be there, and it means that the camera can be far enough away that you don't actually believe the room is the real room anymore, and that drives me crazy.
This is my vision. I take over, you two under me.
Under you.
Can we think about it?
Yeah, of course.
I thought about it. Fuck you.
This family's broken.
Jesse, who runs the writer's room, Jesse Armstrong, is constantly tinkering with the scripts. You know, he'll work with writers that create drafts underneath him, and eventually at some point he tends to take them over and give them a brushing over, and right up until it's too late, basically, he's giving alternate lines for the actors to try, hey, try this other thing. Adam McKay, for the most part, exists in a whole different part of the production than I do. You know, he's never, as I can recall, been on set. You know, he's been in it very early on, a couple of the big meetings, but when it comes to actual sort of day-to-day physical production, he's just not really a player.
Yeah, but I think you can sense the tone. You have his tone.
I mean, it very well. He directed the pilot, of course. So from that alone, it was established this sort of, you know, and I think you see elements of it in The Big Short as well.
Yeah.
You know, there is very much a flavor that is, I think, his pen.
Here we are.
Is he about to strip?
Just
I
remember,
think he's
I'm
going to
not
masturbate on stage to a photo of Dad.
My boy Squiggle cooked up this beat for me.
It was great, and I have to say hats off to Jeremy Strong for, I mean, he nailed it. We were all, as he rehearsed it a couple of times before they rolled cameras on that scene, I think a lot of people's jaws just dropped and were
It's
amazed.
amazing,
We
yeah.
hadn't heard it until, you know, 20 minutes before he delivered the performance.
Born on the North Bank, king of the East Side, 50 years strong. Now he's rolling in a sick rod, handmade suits, raking in loot. 5-star general, your best salute.
In terms of that particular episode, we shot that reception for Logan at a pretty brand new facility in Dundee, Scotland, for the V&A, Victorian Albert Museum, which had just opened this sort of you know, branch dedicated to Scottish artistry and craftsmanship. And we were the first project to film anything there. So, you know, they were excited to have us. We were excited to be there, but there were a lot of questions about what were they able to let us do. We shot there, I think, for 4 nights, overnight each time, and they had to be open for business at 10 the next morning. So we had to design our sets in such a way that we could, one, set them up, you know, starting about 5 o'clock in the evening, and not waste a lot of our shooting time doing that.
Yeah.
We could leave some things, you know, where the public that's in the museum could walk around, but other things we had to pack away and make disappear. And then we also had to cover a lot of the existing art that was on display because we didn't have the rights to show it.
NWA.
I read it. It is burning my eyes, but I cannot look away.
One of the big features of that space is this elevator that goes through the middle of their atrium and is clad with a sort of stainless steel, almost like a mesh in a way. And because it was sort of right there, Kevin Bray, our director for that episode, we knew we wanted to do some projections of Logan's life, and maybe there at one point there was a cartoon sequence that didn't end up in the cut. Ultimately, it didn't quite feel like our world.
But you shot with the cartoon. There's scenes with the
Yeah, they exist somewhere.
Yeah, we have to see that.
Animated versions of young Logan Roy. And it was, you know, ultimately I think what Kendall did with his rap replaced what that wo't have done in a kind of a better way that was more of our world.
L to the OG. Dude be the OG. A-N he playing like a pro. See?